In this episode, you'll hear a real account of living with sensorimotor OCD, where everyday bodily sensations become almost impossible to ignore. We talk about what keeps things stuck, what didn't help, and what genuinely began to change the relationship with awareness. Let's get straight into it. To start off, could you give us a bit of background on what was happening with you with OCD when we first met?
Absolutely. So when we first met, I think you remember that it was quite a dramatic meeting. I was feeling really, really stressed about starting my new job, moving abroad, like all these new changes, and I had kind of been in denial of how bad my sensory motor was and kind of just hoping for the best. But then right before I realized hoping for the best is not an adult's solution to a problem. And so I kind of reached out to you in kind of a desperate state, like 2 weeks before starting. And so, yeah, so I was just really distressed, really scared, really, really anxious. My nervous system was really haywire, I think. And yeah, so that's kind of the mindset that I was in, kind of sobbing. And yeah, that was pretty much
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay. And specifically, what were you really struggling with the most at that time?
I was struggling with, I would say, like social anxiety and sensory motor swallowing OCD.
Mm.
And I think those go hand in hand, at least for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's exactly what I was struggling with, and I was really, really scared of like, oh, but how can I do a job with this? Like, I'm gonna be constantly distracted, constantly, self-aware, stressed, and I won't be able to, be effective and perform, basically.
Yeah. And could you give us a bit more information about kind of what was happening, what stage of life you were at that time, and kind of what was going on in the background in your life?
So I had just graduated from my master's degree like a couple months prior, and I had gotten a job offering. I'm really grateful for it, and I'm in the job right now. But yeah, so like a young 23-year-old just graduated and kind of starting in the world of adulthood. But at the same time, I kind of had not gotten the best OCD help until then and been struggling with sensory motor for about 4 years. And
Mm.
so I was kind of like, well, um, ignoring the problem slash getting kind of not the best help hasn't been helpful, and I kind of was planning on getting rid of it before starting my job and just like counting on my studies to kind of be that buffer time. That did not
Mm.
work out. And so the job eventually became the motivator and the route through which I was able to simultaneously experiment with the OCD coaching and experiment with the social anxiety component.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. So what happened as you started to obviously you did some coaching with me. Things began to change. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the process of that, please?
I think that it was a different perspective that I hadn't received in OCD coaching at all or therapy. It was not about exposure. I mean, part of it was, but it wasn't the whole deal. It wasn't just like CBT, ERP. It was really holistic. And that gave me hope. And also, I would say what really helped me was the group sessions. I had never seen the face of another person with OCD. So those really carried me through the initial month, which I would say
Mm.
was the hardest for me. It was basically just kind of breaking down what's going on from a scientific level almost in my brain. And that really, really helped. And it made me understand that I'm not crazy. And, you know, this is just my brain's way of coping with stress. And I don't have to be stuck forever. But the key to that is seeing that I'm not stuck anyway. I never was. Um, and that perspective shift, I honestly had a hard time implementing in the first month, but it was just about practice, 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 commitment, having faith in the program, faith in the other people that are going through the same stuff as me, and having a non-judgmental space in OCD is quite rare, and I feel like you offered that. And so that carried me through, honestly. And then the second month became much easier, and the third month I just like completely shifted. I like through practice, I actually did get better, which I didn't think was possible. Um, but it did, and that's just the proof that neuroplasticity is possible. It has to go through understanding, tolerance, and self-compassion, which is something you teach above all, I think, which is very different from most uh, like teachers and practitioners out there. So I don't know if you want to talk about the turning point next, but I'd be happy to talk about that.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned about this idea of, when you realize that actually you could be aware of it, and that actually, that isn't the problem in a way that, that for so long with OCD, we tell ourselves that the obsession, the theme is the problem. I just have to deal with that. I just have to get rid of it. As long as I'm just not aware of the swallowing, as long as I'm just not anxious in social situations, then I'll be fine. All of this will just go away. Obviously, if only it was that simple. And I think it seems to me like a big part of what has helped you is, you tell me, but perhaps learning to bring a bit more compassion and acceptance to that.
Absolutely. And I think I was telling you earlier, I've been having a hard day today. I haven't really been sleeping enough. And this kind of day in the past would have sent me into like, self-hatred mode, just like really beating down on myself. And in a sense, like you made me understand that role of the inner critic is actually, in a sense, trying to help me, but it's not doing the best job. And so today, like, yeah, I had some awareness, but you said this a while ago. It doesn't matter if you're aware for 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days. The point is, don't make yourself suffer about it. And a lot of the suffering was self-inflicted. It was judgment, it was criticism, it was not being in the present.
Yeah,
And I think that, but that pulls us away from the present is the criticism
yeah,
because you all of a sudden, oh, I have this huge problem in my head. I have to figure it out. Okay, just like it's not a problem as long as you don't make it a problem. And but it seems so simple, but genuinely, like I didn't understand that, and I thought that I was helping so much by criticizing myself, by being forcing myself almost to be hyper aware of all of my like performance, and it's not a performance. You are existing. You're having a hard time already. Give yourself acceptance, patience, and calm, and understanding that your nervous system is haywire and it's a whole overall really helped me with my perspective shift and understanding like, oh, like the problem isn't the awareness. Maybe the problem is my nervous system as a whole. I don't know how to leave myself alone. I don't know how to give myself a break. Um, I don't know how to experience an uncomfortable moment with more space, more expansion,
mm,
more of a wearing it attitude.
yeah,
And that was just it. I think that the meditations you do really, really helped. I think that the breath work we did really helped. Understanding that maybe there's a kind of spiritual element involved in OCD, this like constant control needs to be released. The fist has to be, you know, released. And all of that really helped me understand like the swallowing, the blinking, the breathing is never the issue. The issue is the inner mean guardian in your head that
mm.
hasn't had a break for years and just give it retirement. Yeah, give it permission to just like not necessarily having to completely believe it all the time, completely fuse with every thought, and giving that space and learning from other people in the program helped me a lot. Like I learned that you can just take some space from any horrible judgment, thought, anything like that is totally, totally within reason, totally achievable. It's hard, it takes practice, but eventually it comes. And so today, honestly, it was a hyper awareness day for me, but so what? Like I can still have dinner, I can still work, I still got my work done. Um, I'm still at home, I'm enjoying my night. I'm talking to you and it's okay. And I'm sure that in the end, that is the attitude which pushes us towards recovery, towards leading a normal life and having normality within reach, which is just being a little bit less judgmental and harsh on yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you said so many different things there, but I agree with all of them. Yeah. It's a big part of this has to do with the inner critic, as you were just pointing out, this inner critic that's really trying to protect us. Um, but it demands perfection. It says, hey, it's not okay if you're aware of this thing. But when we have that kind of attitude, all that does is it just makes us more and more aware of it. Within OCD, there is this kind of faulty alarm system, the amygdala, that's firing a lot of the time and telling us that something is wrong. With sensorimotor OCD, typically what we think of being that wrong thing is the awareness or the action, or often, as you pointed out at the start, there is a kind of social relationship between sensorimotor OCD and social anxiety, where we're fearful that, somebody's going to judge us negatively in some way because of this, this awareness that we think everybody else notices. Only, of course, that's in our head. And, it's this inner critic that creates that story and that narrative. And when we're not careful, we just run with that narrative. And unfortunately, we can build this story up. We can make it bigger and bigger, inflate it until it seems like the biggest thing in our life. And, the important thing to recognize is that at any point, you can begin to turn that story around again, that ultimately that story is not factual. It's something that you've been telling yourself maybe for a relatively short time or maybe for a much longer time. But in both situations, you can learn to change that story and learn to tell yourself a more positive and helpful and hopeful one. But a big part of that is initially learning how to let go of this inner critic. What what do you think helped you in the end to let go of that, to be a bit more compassionate and kind with yourself?
I think it was just like the fact that I stopped avoiding. And so stopping avoidance put me in situations where I was confronted to the social aspect. And at first, like I said, it was so hard because I was convinced that everybody hated me, everybody judged me, nobody wanted to be around me. And just by like having to be out in the real world, you realize, oh, people don't hate me. Everybody has something weird about them. Everybody has imperfections, ways that they would maybe want to be better, more performant, whatever it might be, in ways that are so crazy that we can't even imagine. Everybody has weird, crazy stuff going on in their heads. But the difference is you can either believe that, make yourself miserable, or you can just take space. I think for me, like the easier part was wearing the physical symptoms, like, okay, heat in my face, um, breathing hard. Those things I could deal with. What I couldn't really deal with was the really mean, really judgmental part. And for a long time, I was trying to just not believe, not believe, not believe. Okay, but that doesn't really work. What worked for me is the work that we did together with like the cold exposure, holding the breath work. And that for one, because you realize, okay, even the discomfort feeling, the discomfort thought, both of those you can not judge. You can not even judge your own judgment, if that makes sense. Like meta
Mm,
non-judgment. It's not gonna be
yeah.
perfect. You have OCD. You can judge yourself and accept that and be like, okay, I'm still gonna take a step back. I hear you, inner critic. You want to help. Okay, I'm gonna let you do your thing, but I'm still gonna choose to focus on what I'm doing. I'm still gonna choose to be in the room with the other people. And so for me, it was like stop the fight and just let it be, okay? I can also accept that I'm having the judgment, which that was the key moment. And so in so doing, you lead by action rather than changing your thoughts. So, okay, I'm in a meeting. I've always felt incompetent. I've always felt weird. Okay, those thoughts are coming through, but I'm sitting back and I'm still in the meeting and I'm still talking to my colleagues. And that was so crazy because in that moment I realized like I don't need to fuse. I don't need to feel so incompetent. I can be more mature than my inner child. I can know what it's doing and still like let it be and be in this meeting. And for the first time, I actually felt like, wow, like I can be competent. Like I found the exit door outside of OCD.
Mm, wow.
It, yeah, like the back door or something. Like I don't know. It does take practice though. It really
Mm.
does. But that light bulb moment for me was in that meeting, and then I started crying because afterwards we also had a meeting together with everybody else, and uh, you know, you were talking about like how do you see yourself achieving this? And I realized like, oh, like it's me now. Like I don't even have to visualize. I know it's me. I know it's imperfect. I think that that was one of the most powerful things you said is your acceptance process is not going to be perfect. Because again, we are so, OCD that we want to be perfect about our acceptance of imperfection. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just accept that the process of acceptance is going to be imperfect. You're going to be better at it some days and others not. Um, as long as you commit to those values and as long as you vow to do your best, nobody can take that away from you. And no amount of progress that you did is going to be undone by one bad day, one bad week, one bad month. You will get back on that horse always, and it's a part of you now. You know what your values are. You know how far you've come, how far you can come,
Yeah.
even at your worst, and it's always going to count. It is always going to count. Positivity, abundance is on the other side. And just by starting this journey, you already know that there's so much more out there for you. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
thank
amazing.
you for
That's
everything that you
amazing.
taught me, genuinely.
Thank you for sharing that, Selma. And then finally, if you only had one piece of advice for people who might be really struggling right now, perhaps with OCD or sensorimotor OCD, what would you tell them?
I would say like honestly, your sensations, your thoughts, they don't have to dictate your reality. People are much more indulgent than you think that they are. They're much more forgiving and they care so much more about themselves and what's going on in their lives. And a lot of the time, the things that you might think about other people are really just projections of your own. You think that they don't like you, they think you're weird because you think that about yourself. And the starting point is to undo that. The work will be with undoing that, or at least like kind of taking space from that. And people do not care nearly as much as we think they do. I spent like three and a half, I'd say, because I started coaching with you towards the end of the years creating this narrative that I'm like unsocial, unlovable almost. But there's, sorry to sound corny, but like there's so much love around. There's so much love to go around. It's so much more powerful than the OCD. It's so much more powerful than the judgment. It will always, always win if you just let it. Give it a slight window into your life. Give it a slight little access. And it will literally, like, you will realize how much more there is and how many more opportunities there are for your brain to think differently and rewire itself for the best of your life. And it doesn't have to be this way. And there's so much hope. And like, my life was miserable at some points. But ultimately, like it made me who I am. I now have so much more empathy for people. And I would say, like, what you're going through will serve such a bigger purpose in the end. You will have so much more ambition, goals, love for yourself, love for others, patience, tolerance, like all these things that make you even more wonderful. They will come from your journey with OCD. Maybe it happened for a reason. And you have all these lessons that you will never forget, trust me, because it's so like imbued into your soul. You will do everything for this recovery, and that's precisely why I will give you everything. Quote me on that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you, and really great to hear about your recovery story. Uh, Thanks a lot for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thank you for having me.
This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.